So Daytona was the round 5 of the Manufacturers Series of 2024, and this was for me one of the most difficult tracks. Why? Because I'm just not used to these kind of high-speed turns and trying to adjust my approach and of course adjust my lines to get the most out of those turns. So I was really frustrated because whenever I was going through the bus stop, my lap was either invalidated or I lost a half a second, and I just couldn't know why. So the first lap was a pretty decent one, the second one was even better. But I just would like to explain exactly what I did when I was going through the bus stop and exactly what happened to me and how I changed it and eventually how I kind of got some decent points in the end. So if we have a little look at what Antonio was doing, you can clearly see the difference in the bus stop. So especially 2 corners that I was losing the most time. So in general, I was not carrying enough speed through the middle of that corner because I was braking too much, I was slowing down the car, and if you've been following me for a while, you probably know that I was putting a lot of pressure onto those front tires while turning in, and this definitely wasn't possible. So I just had to release the brakes, turn the car, and just press the brakes once again. So it was kind of a double braking zone. Instead of just a braking zone, you lift and then you downshift, upshift, and so on. So I believe this really helped me in the long run because now I wasn't losing half a second. I was actually quite consistent, even though I didn't made it into the 43s. And that's exactly why I got a decent qualifying time in my first and in my second race. Here I would really like to focus on my second race, even though the first one was actually a pretty decent one. So I qualified reasonably well, I stayed with the pack, but then later what happened is, well, I think it was just unfortunate, and yeah, in the end I picked up damage, which pretty much destroyed my race. I know it is what it is. It happens, and I don't think I'm mad at this point, but it was like really unfortunate that it happened to me. I lost a lot of time behind the guys that were actually leading, and I lost the connection to them, and there was no going back. But in my second race, I was once again up there. I actually qualified reasonably well once again, and it was quite interesting what actually happened, because in my previous race I realized that I just had to change the tires if I wanted to survive here, because the Corvette isn't that great on tires, and my tire saving strategies did not work at this point. They were actually okay, but not the best thing. So I tried to save the tires a little bit better. I did it, but I couldn't save enough fuel and just couldn't stay connected to the guys in front. I really tried pushing, but at then one point I realized that if I want to make something out of this race, I definitely need to change the tires, and I think this really impacted my race. Maybe I should have stayed out, maybe I should have done something differently, but I didn't. And so we were in lap 5 out of 20 and everyone was saving fuel. As you can see, I was trying to kind of save as much fuel as possible, moving my fuel map into 3, sometimes even 4, and short shifting a lot. But unfortunately I made this mistake and I went slightly too wide, which in the end, or as usual, it means a penalty on the circuit. And so it was, a half a second penalty. Not game over, but I definitely lost a bit of time, and on this track is not something that you want to do, and especially if the front guys just try to push a little bit more this lap and you lose the connection. This is not looking good. I tried saving a bit of fuel, and then I realized that the other guys might be fighting a little bit too much, which in the end led to me being just about 1.6 seconds off the lead. In the end, this allowed me to put my fuel map into 6 and eventually join them. So it was always 1.5, 1.6 up to 2 seconds. And the leader, I don't know what the leader did, but he saved so much fuel, which was incredible in the end. I was constantly in the slipstream, which usually is an advantage here, especially in longer races like this one where you need to save some fuel. And I don't know how he did it. He was really good at fuel saving, and I think it was the Supra. So in general, trying to carry as much speed as I possibly could, but also trying to save as much fuel, because even 1 liter or maybe even a couple of liters will mean a lot of difference in the end, because you're usually refueling 10 liters per second. Even if you can save 5, you got yourself half a second. So this can help you to move away from the pack and eventually get you into some clean air. So the guys decided to pit, but I decided to do a little bit of a different strategy and change the tires. And this was not mandatory. And I realized that I had a lot less fuel than anyone else out there. And somehow I put more fuel than I needed just to make sure that I have enough fuel so I can push by the end of this race. And I kind of got myself into P10, which was kind of P9 at this point, but I got stuck in traffic, which is not that bad because you can always go for a move if you have better tires, but it was really difficult now because I was 23 seconds to the leader, which didn't pit at this point, but I was 8.5 to 9 seconds off the group where I stayed with. And this was huge. So the gap went from 1.5 to 8.5 seconds. I lost too much time on changing those tires, and maybe this would have worked out if I pitted a lap or two earlier, but now I couldn't use the full potential of these tires. And I was just trying to make the most out of it. It was P10 at this point, and if I even want to get back to my old place, I need to make up 3 more places, which was difficult, which was incredibly difficult. So I started to do something about that, and I really wanted to send it. Let's say send it in a couple of places. So I decided turn 1 was the way to do it. Kind of tuck myself into the inside of this turn, and since I had better tires, it was actually pretty easy on the acceleration to get this move done. And now I was behind P8. Turismo had some decent pace, even though this car was not that really great on fuel economy. It wasn't that great. It was decent, but not great. And then it was just time to, well, to push it a little bit more and just try to extract a little bit more out of the car, which is usually quite risky, especially with my car and especially with the track limits as they are. I tried pushing, I really tried to get as close as possible to Turismo so I can maintain this gap and maybe give him a little push onto the straight. And this actually happened, so I was staying very, very close to him, but at this point I crossed the line of those track limits and this got me half a second penalty. But what happened here was even more incredible. This was a no contact, so he started losing the car, and this was not a contact from my side. I lifted there at that one point, but when I watched the replay, we actually did not touch. But I got myself a half a second penalty for going wide and losing time, which is incredible at this game, once again. But I lost a place, once again, but I was in the slipstream. And I had pretty good tires, but it was only 4 laps to go. So it was really time once again and really start to push as much as I possibly could. P8, actually all the way up to P5 to P6 is here. They're in maybe 1.5, maybe 2 seconds. So that's not much, that's still possible. And I gave it everything. I gave the guy in front a little push, nothing too much, but then as we got onto the straight, it was really difficult to maintain this gap because everyone was getting really, really close. And this was, well, it was a difficult thing to do, to avoid everyone and kind of obey the track limits, not to pick up a penalty, not to spin, and of course finish the race in one piece without damage. Because even if you get damage, you're losing just about 1.5, sometimes even more seconds per lap. And then it's pretty much game over, which happened in my previous race. You can always repair the car in the pits, but pitting now isn't really an option. So I was sitting in P9 and then all of a sudden I saw this little dive. I thought it was going to be a move. Unfortunately, it was a contact in the end, but it was actually pretty good for me because I gained 1 place and I was back into P8 with fresh tires. And I knew these guys in front of me did not change their tires because they were really behind me. So I lost a bit of time on changing the tires, but now it's finally time to go for it. It's finally time to do something. And I thought to myself, if I don't send it now, I'm probably never going to send it because the situation isn't going to get much better. We have 2 laps to go, actually a little bit more than 2 laps. So to the inside of this corner, I'm thinking about it. It's not very smart idea, but I got better tires. And once again, I tried to apply all of the things that I learned before, which in the end led to this move into P6. Slipstream did its job. It was actually a pretty good one. So I wanted to go all the way to the right to get the best possible line out of this corner, but then I realized that if I lose one place here, it's not looking good. So I decided to close down the doors and eventually use that extra grip that I had. And now, instead of fighting for P10, it's actually a chase for P5. Tsutsu did not change the tires. I knew it because he was really far behind, and now I can see him, and I was actually putting in some pretty decent sectors. And now the race actually started to look a lot better because I started in P7 and now I'm in P6 fighting for P5, or actually chasing P5. So it was a pretty big gap, not gonna lie. I didn't think that it was gonna be possible to get this one, so 6/10 is a lot. But again, the straight is very long, and I said to myself, just don't get a penalty. Take it easy through the bus stop. You don't have to push it as much. Even though now when I think about it, I lost a lot of time here. So he was actually able to pull away, and it was again 6/10, but I had a better exit, and now the gap was going down. So he was less than half a second. He knows that if he stays in this line, he's probably not going to be able to keep the P5. Kind of running out of fuel. 2/10. I know it's going to get close at this point, and all of a sudden, right before the finish line, I got him. And it was P5. So in general, I changed only one thing, and it saved me a lot of time. And this is what I always recommend, and this is what really helped me in this round. In the end, a very interesting race, a very interesting combination, and to be honest, I quite enjoyed this one. So guys, once again, please let me know what you think about this race, and thank you for watching.